seen the numbers drop. So for 2023, we had maybe 58 homicides. 2024, we had 48. 2024, we had 37. We seeing like a 10% drop every year. And now as we speak, we have 31, 32 right now for the year. And we're trying to finish out the year. When I started with the Anti-Violence Coalition, we had 112 homicides. We had 112 homicides when I was just out in the streets doing the Stop the Violence rallies and all them things.
Welcome to The Incredible Messenger, a blend of real-world stories, expert insights, and proven strategies that keep our families, communities, and cities safe and healthy. Moving beyond rhetoric and politics to practical solutions and community safety, here's your host, Jonathan McMillan.
Welcome back to the Incredible Messenger podcast. I am your host, Jonathan McMillan. And today I have the pleasure of bringing you a guest I've been waiting to have on the show basically since I started the show. You all know that I used to run the Denver office of youth violence prevention and then was the director of the Colorado Office of Gun Violence Prevention. And while I was really grateful to find myself in those roles, many times, more often than not, I felt like a duck out of the water. Because, quite honestly, my community background, my background being involved in the lifestyle, the culture that sometimes drove gun violence in my earlier years, and being an incarcerated person at one point, and then being a champion for community in many ways, put me in a position where I was qualified to run the offices that I was hired to run. But I didn't have that conventional background of being a government employee. And my community background just didn't prepare me for being inside government. Now, with all that being said, I found comfort in having the conversations and being able to move the way I was moving inside those roles from watching how my guest today moved unapologetically on behalf of the people who she was called to serve, those who were most impacted by firearm-related harm. Lakeesha Eure is the Deputy Mayor of Public Safety in Newark, New Jersey, and she's been at the center of Newark's transformation over the last several years, helping drive violence to the lowest levels the city has seen in more than, check this out, 6 decades. 6 decades, longer than I've been alive. What makes her different is how she comes at this work. She's a licensed clinical social worker, not a career law enforcement official, and she's built Newark's violence prevention strategy through you guessed it, a public health lens, trauma recovery, community intervention, and real accountability across systems. So I'm really excited to have this conversation because it isn't just about the programs or the headlines, because we could spend all day talking about this. What I'm looking for in this conversation is talking about how you move inside the systems. So if you are a new director or your city is thinking, your jurisdiction is thinking about starting a new office of violence prevention, and you come from the community like Lakeesha and myself, this is going to be the conversation about how you hold power without losing trust and what it actually takes to move the needle with inside these systems. So with all that said, Lakeesha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on the Incredible Messenger podcast. I've certainly been waiting my turn patiently, but I'm here. I'm excited to be here and can't wait to have this conversation.
Well, you didn't have to wait patiently. Honestly, all you had to do was just be like, hey, Jonathan, I got something to say. And I was going to make a whole space for you. Like I said, I've been queuing you up and waiting to get you onto the show. So I'm glad we were able to make this happen.
Absolutely.
So let's jump right in. Keisha, I spoke about some of the things that you've accomplished since you've been in this role as a deputy mayor in Newark. Can you talk about how did you find yourself in this work? How did you create space for yourself in this work, and why? Why did you want to do that?
Well, I don't know if I necessarily planned any of these things. I certainly never aspired to be in government or a deputy mayor. I've always seen myself as a social worker, as a person in community. So I come to this work by way of, like you said, we don't like to talk about activism, but activism trained me. I come to this work from the ground. Initially, in doing this work, I started really just being a part of it was a Newark Anti-Violence Coalition that I was a part of. And this was before there was funding, before there were credible messengers, language, before there was any of those things. There was just people from the ground that was sick and tired of people being shot and killed in the community. So we began to, show up in places where violence took place. This is before Mayor Baraka becomes the mayor. He's an activist at this time. He was a teacher, a principal at a school. And this was just people tired of shootings happening and there not being a response, that it was just like business as usual. It was an increase in women and children being shot in the early 2000s here.
Mm-hmm.
And, we began to, organize. And organizing is like the key that I recognize that many people and don't have training in and don't really know how to do. But it was the organizing of the people on the ground to say enough is enough. And it was led by community. And we would send out text messages wherever a shooting or an act of violence took place, and we would show up there. And we began to shut down the traffic in those locations because we had the attitude that if violence took place here, then, we're going to shut it down the same way y'all had to put up yellow tape when the police came. We're going to put up our yellow tape. We're going to give these messages. We're going to find out what happened, because it's not law enforcement's job to figure out crime and violence in our community, right? It's our job. And we had that type of energy. And at the time, Cory Booker was our mayor. And we didn't think that he heard us. We didn't think that he cared about the violence the way that we cared about it. And he didn't take meetings from us. And, so we began to organize ourselves, and we came up with demands. And those demands were like, we had a first demand that Gary McCarthy was our police director at the time, that Cory Booker brought here from New York, and we didn't want him. And our first demand was Gary McCarthy must go. And we wanted an active voice in public safety. So we began to organize around having an active voice in public safety. Our second demand was we wanted employment. We wanted jobs for Newarkers. The people who live here who have the high paying jobs are taking the jobs and leaving our community every day with the money and the resources. So we wanted jobs for Newarkers, and we understood that violence is about poverty. And if people had jobs, people had money, they would be less apt to commit violence in the community. The third one was about education. We wanted the homicide taught in our school systems. We understood that if Black and brown people understood where they came from, and they understood history, they would love themselves better. And if we love ourselves, then we're less likely to commit violence against people who look like us. The fourth one, we wanted the Bloods and the Crips to put their guns down. During that time, they was blaming all of the violence on gang members, and that wasn't the truth, but we didn't have the data then to back it up. And we went to the gang members, and we told the gang culture, we need y'all to put y'all guns down. Innocent people can't get hurt, so we need y'all to have some rules around this stuff. And we needed them to do something better and different, because Ms. Williams can't get shot because you trying to shoot Abdul. Like, we got to do something different. So we went to them too. And finally, we wanted violence declared a public health issue. And those were our demands. And every week in the streets, we would go to every neighborhood where violence took place, and we would spew out these demands. We had a bullhorn or a sound system, and we would shut down the traffic. Nothing could get through. Buses, cars, nothing. And people was upset. But we needed them to have that same level of outrage at the shootings and stuff that was happening in the community, and not be mad at us, because we trying to stop it. And for 155 weeks in a row, we organized to be able to get our demands met. And so when Mayor Baraka became the mayor, he ultimately put into place violence being declared a public health issue, which means now we got to put some resources to it. And that's ultimately how our Office of Violence Prevention got started, because we already had an anti-violence coalition. When the George Floyd happened, there was rallying cries nationally around defunding the police, and we decided to create our Office of Violence Prevention. And we understood that we needed to go to city council meetings to get this ordinance declaring violence a public health issue. We are reallocating 5% of the police department's budget. We then open our Office of Violence Prevention, and I become the director. And I had to have a conversation with the mayor, like, Mayor, you can't go get nobody from the outside to come and do this. We're going to have a real problem if you bring an outsider here. And I say, I want to do it. I'm organizing already. I'm chairing the anti-violence work. I'm on the ground organizing law enforcement. I'm organizing community. I'm like, yeah, not understanding that once you say, yeah, then it becomes a different ball game, because now you don't get to do what you want to do the same way that you did. You don't have the level of autonomy and freedom. You got to learn politics, right? And they dictate your salary. They dictate where your office is going to be. They dictate all of the things, and everything is under scrutiny, and everything is about optics. And I wasn't ready for that. I didn't know that that's what it was going to be, and that's what it was going to look like. All I knew is I was about the community. Community came first. And I wanted to be able to stop the violence in the community. But nobody taught me about the budget, how to create a budget, what 5% of the police department budget was going to mean, and how to read an ordinance, that you got to go to city council meetings now and you got to go talk to them and they dictate and they make decisions on what you can and can't do. So the ball game changed.
I was attempting to articulate the same wake-up call for me once I got into my role. So again, I give you my admiration from an outside observer, watching how you have navigated that with grace and power, and something that's dope. Because once you get into those roles, one of the things that people don't recognize is how lonely of a space that can be. And I'm saying this for anybody who's listening to this episode, thinking that getting appointed or getting hired into one of these roles is all gumdrops and lollipops. As soon as you can be from the community for 30 years, 10 toes down, and then as soon as you get a badge and you get a check from the city, then you the city, my guy.
Right.
You are the city now. You
absolutely
sometimes lose that credible messenger pass because they're like, nah, you work for the mayor now, Mr. Mayor or Miss Mayor or whatever.
They began to call me a systems agent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm an agent of the system, right? But before I was Sister Keisha, before I was, the person that was showing up, for all of the people. I was at the scene. I was at the funerals. I was at the hospital. I was at all of the things. And I still was, right? Now this just required me to do it. Before it was optional. But now this is a requirement. Now I'm creating strategic plans. I didn't have a strategic plan when I was just doing the anti-violence work, right? I didn't have, any of those things. Now you got to, systematize these things and make them real. Now your job is to protect the mayor at all costs now, and to protect the government agency like the city, even when the city is not producing or is wrong or whatever it is. Now your job is still to protect the city. So you got to be able to navigate both spaces. And it's hard to navigate community and government when you have been a person who used to fight against the government. When you were a person who was out there rallying and protesting against the police, against the city council, against the mayor's office. And now you the person that they yelling at, right? You on the other side of it now. They're now yelling at you. They're now, demanding things of you when you was out there doing the demanding. So, it's always different being on the other side. And it takes skill to be able to navigate that, to be able to be humble enough and have humility enough to say, you know what, I used to be on the other side. So now I have to be able to listen to them enough to see what they are trying to ask for, but also go get it, right? When you on that other side, you got to produce a little bit harder. You got to show up a little bit more. You got to do 2 times and 3 times more than anybody else. And I sit in a meeting with the mayor every week, every Friday, with all of the directors, the water department, the health department, code enforcement, all of the other departments. And all he want to hear about is your report. He want to hear the Office of Violence Prevention. He want to hear the public safety report. He listened a little bit harder when it's your turn to do your report out. And he scrutinized yours a little bit harder, right? And you looking like you see all these other people in here. There's 30 more directors in here. And all you care about is he called from Africa one time, from Ghana. And we thinking that we about to get out of here because the business administrator runs that meeting when the mayor's not there. And he called and he was like, we like, all right, Mayor, we ready to go? He's like, no, I need to hear the public safety report. Like, damn, everybody looking. He like, is Keisha there? And everybody look at me. Right. He called all the way from Africa to make sure he hear your report. I'm like, this is some fault. But he ran his whole campaign on public safety. Everything depends on public safety. Everything depends on if the city is safe, if the shootings are down, if violence is down, if crime is down, all of those things. And now your job becomes to be responsible for 310,000 people and accountable to 310,000 people. Never in my wildest dreams was that what I aspire to do. And when you in government and you doing violence prevention work and you doing credible messenger work, It's a different ball game and a different skill set and a different level that you got to be able to navigate. That when the mayor called, you got to have the answers. You got to be on the scene. You got to be able to know what's happening, who did it, why, all of the things. And so you got to become what you never had to be before. And you got to be all things. The task is almost impossible.
It sounds like the blessing and the curse of it is that you have a mayor who has all of these expectations of you, but that simply is because he's bought in, right? And he sees the value in you, in the role that you serve, in this coordinated effort for public safety through a public health lens, right? Without criticizing anybody too much, being on the other side of that is I have worked in these spaces where the head honcho, whether it's a mayor or a governor, wasn't completely bought in, wasn't completely supportive, right? To get time with, and I'm just be very, very honest here, weren't many times that I met with the mayor in the capacity of my role as the director of violence prevention. I had a relationship with my guy and could show up in spaces and be in places with him, but he wasn't getting the weekly report out from me. He wasn't asking what is it that you need in order to make this move and work. Now, luckily, I did have other people who were decision makers and could support the work, but it wasn't the mayor.
Right.
And when I was at the state, the only time that I saw the governor in the 2 years that I was in that role was at the Denver Nuggets celebratory parade.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I was there is because the mayor actually invited me. I wasn't even working for him no more, and he invited me to be a part of this parade. I say that all this to ask you to speak to the importance of having a mayor who is bought in. Like, what are the benefits of that?
Right.
Because there's mayors who listen to the show too, and they need to know.
Yeah, it's amazing because a lot of cities don't have, their mayors, their leadership that's bought in. A lot of mayors are not going to reallocate 5% of their police department budget. They're just not going to do that, right? It's just not popular for them to do. So taking risk, right, and then be able to take risks is a huge thing. So it's important to have mayor, city government, and law enforcement and your faith-based and your school-based, right, to buy into the work. It makes your job so much easier when they can see your value, when they can see that your work matters, and it makes their job easier. Being able to integrate that. Our mayor have a meeting with every Friday with every director. And when you report out, he's listening to see if y'all talk, if y'all coordinate, if y'all collaborate, if the reports are similar. And for me, being under the Office of Violence Prevention, and when it was a new entity, he would listen to see if the police director would say, hey, we had 6 incidents this week. The Office of Violence Prevention responded to 4, and we followed up on 2 incidents, or we will follow up on the last 2. He want to hear that. And we texting each other under the table, like, say this, say that, so that we on the same page. Because when we give the report out, my report out is 2 people after yours, and he's listening to see the correlations. And we texting under the table. We got a every other week meeting that we have just within ourselves. So if we don't talk, if I don't get the notification from law enforcement, then everybody is in trouble, because then he don't get the update. His updates come directly from me. And if the information is incorrect, means his information is incorrect. So it was that type of, roll down. So that's what mattered more. So everybody knew first call goes to 911, second call goes to Keisha. So my next call is to the mayor. Hey, mayor, we have, 3 people shot, 2 people went to the hospital, 1 person DOA. Right. I'm reporting that up to him, not the police, not nobody. He can't hear it from nobody else, because now he got to be on Channel 4 News with the information from the ground and from whatever, the other side says. So it matters. And I know that a lot of us are not that intricate into it and seeing why it matters. But for me, my job in terms of now being the deputy mayor, then I was just the Office of Violence Prevention Director. And I become the deputy mayor because now I'm navigating all the nuances. And once I was able to navigate the gang culture, I was in CVI LA. I was a part of the first cohort, and I'm learning all of these things. I'm texting the mayor like, oh, mayor, we need to do this. This city is doing that. Oh, we need to do that. Now, and I'm starting to learn and see, and I'm texting him all this stuff. And he like, all right, well, do it. All right, well, do it. Right. And then, and his, all right, well, do it now requires a little bit more for me in terms of now more responsibility. One of the things that I did my capstone on was being able to coordinate the gang culture in our city. So I was able to start doing brunch every Sunday with our Bloods, Crips, our Latin Kings, and all of our gang culture. And I invited the mayor to one of the brunches, and he looking at me like, he shot him, right? And I'm like, yeah, we mediated that. He like, well, he snitched on him, right? And I'm like, yeah, we had to pay a couple dollars for that. And he like, are you crazy? I'm like, yeah, probably, right?
A little bit.
Right, but being able to do what nobody else was willing to do, because we was having shootings that was crazy. Was one of the big homies got shot. And if I knew we was about to have bloodshed in the streets and I needed to do something different, I was willing to do something different to get something different. And it was not with his permission. I didn't go ask him what you think I should do. It's like he said, do it. I said, all right, I'm going to go do it. But from that time to this time, from 2023 to now, we've been able to organize One Hood. And that's what it is One Hood with all of the organizations, the big homies, the people who call the shots. And then being able to organize them and make them a part of public safety and give them stipends and incorporate them in the ecosystem was like groundbreaking for us, because we never brought them to the table before. So we got to look at the theory of change, and I'm looking at all of the stuff, and I'm like, who's missing? And they was missing from the table. And now that we've been seeing the numbers drop. So for 2023, we had maybe 58 homicides. 2024, we had 48. 2024, we had 37. We're seeing like a 10% drop every year. And now as we speak, we have 31, 32 right now for the year. And we're trying to finish out the year. When I started with the Anti-Violence Coalition, we had 112 homicides. We had 112 homicides when I was just out in the streets doing the Stop the Violence rallies and all them things. So to now have an investment, to have mayor and leadership and city council and law enforcement and community-based partners all working together, we go from 112 to 32. Which is a tremendous, tremendous drop. But it's everybody working together. It's everything coming together. It's not just one thing. And that's what we learned.
I'm glad you just said that. So first off, let me congratulate you and take that congratulations on everybody who has participated and contributed to that. Impressive is not a strong enough word in that reduction of the homicides. So congratulations on that. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, obviously. I literally have people as in my hometown. I'm speaking about you on a daily basis because of the way that you are being very innovative, being very bold, and being very creative with what you're building out there. One of the things that you just mentioned, I want to really highlight, because I think more jurisdictions need to understand when you say that everybody is involved. There's having the Office of Violence Prevention, and then you as a deputy mayor who understands the street culture and the ecosystems that operate there, but then that inside circle of the ecosystems within the city government. Yep. Can you talk more about how that's built and why it needs to be built that way, where the office serves as a hub and connecting services for those who are in need?
Absolutely. So we have a Brick City Peace Collective, and our Brick City Peace Collective houses all of our community-based organizations, because I know that, coordination is an issue where we have folks that's in competition and everybody want to be the only ones. But it's like, no, we need everybody. So as we had our Anti-Violence Coalition, I'm telling you, that's the early 2000s. That's 20 years ago. About when the mayor became the mayor and he wanted to organize and make it more, systemic, then the Newark Community Street Team was developed. So he brought Akila Sherrills in from California, and to be able to, make it more professionalized, right? Because folks was doing the work, but it wasn't professionalized and organized. So Newark Community Street Team comes in. We have a Newark Street Academy, because we talked about that educational piece where we have a lot of our young people dropped out of school and all of the things. So we began to pull together public safety strategy. And the public safety strategy started with the Newark Community Street Team, the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition, the Newark Street Academy, where we have a school where the teachers are formerly incarcerated folks, are justice impacted folks, former police officers, former Black Panther members, right? That's the folks that's teaching in the schools, because we needed folks to be relatable. But then we, then begin to build out the rest of the ecosystem. The Brick City Peace Collective came about in 2018. They came about before the Office of Violence Prevention. And this is important because a lot of OVPs are helicoptering in with no basis, no foundation. So we had OVP here had a foundation because we had a Brick City Peace Collective where we had organizations already working together. And it may have only been 5 or 6 at that time working together. And the mayor ultimately said, y'all got to work together here and y'all got to play well in the sandbox here before you can go anywhere else. I'm not going to sign off on you getting no grants or no money from nowhere else if you don't know how to play well here. I'm not going to give you no letters of support if you don't know how to play well here. This is your home base. And if the house is on fire here, you can't be in another city trying to help do work somewhere else and the house is on fire here. So it pushed us to work together and say, you know what, our house on fire here. So we began to realize that the outreach workers, our credible messages didn't have data. We wasn't data informed. So we was being scrutinized because we just doing the work without the data. And the police got data for days. They got intelligence for days. They got equipment for days that we don't have. And we was working from a disadvantage. And again, we trying to do the impossible with nothing. The budgets was shoestring budgets. And in my first grant that I had gotten doing this work under the mayor's office, before there was any dollars given from the mayor's office, was from the DOJ. And it was a program for men who had been affected by violence. And they gave me a 3-year grant. And ultimately, the DOJ begins to say, why would I continue to invest in your city if your own city is not investing? So then I had to go to the mayor and say, Mayor, we need an investment from the city. I got grant dollars, I got VOCA dollars, I got all these other dollars, but I don't have no money from the city. And that's another place, right, where we go get dollars from other places, private foundation and different places. But if the city is not investing in its own, work, then the outside people and federal folks are looking like, why should I? So it helped me change my mindset to go tell the mayor, we got to do something different. And ultimately, when we did get ARPA dollars, the line for me was like 20 million. I gave 16 million to the streets, put 16 million on the ground. And the lesson there, we can't be afraid to make the investment in our folks. So I invested 16 million, and it was like different lanes of work that needed to happen. We realized that everybody can't be credible messengers. Everybody can't be social workers. For the Office of Violence Prevention, I hired social workers, and they are embedded in all of the police precincts throughout the city. The police officers give them all of the police reports from the day before, and we follow up on all of the police reports. And that helps to stop the cycle of retaliation sometimes, or it helps to stop people from not having resources.
So, Keisha, you've said a lot, which, man, you should just have your own show, honestly, teaching people how to build this out from the foundation. The investment, if you get 21 million, investing 16 million into the streets, vetting social workers into the police department. Again, this is evidence of the innovative pieces that I talk about. I imagine I don't honestly I haven't looked at the budget or the numbers, but even looking at like that 5% reallocation from the police budgets into violence prevention, I don't think anybody will argue and say 5%. That's like percentage wise, that's a minuscule number. Dollar wise, that may be massive. But how did say Parks and Rec contribute to, and not resources, how were they at the table? How was Department of Housing? How were your Department of Human Services? How were the other agencies within the mayor's cabinet? How did you bring them together and have the Office of Violence Prevention serving as a hub to connect to what the social workers were saying were the issues with the people who were being impacted.
So the mayor ultimately helped to set the stage and the foundation for that, because my first year I had to do hiring. I'm trying to figure it out. Right. And many of us know how it is to be able to have to fly the plane and build it at the same time. Right. Right. So you are the mechanic, you the stewardess, you the pilot, you everything, with no resources again, right? With no help, no resources, no training, and you figuring it out on your own. And what the mayor was able to do was he told the other departments, if she fails, then we all fail, right? Because everything that she's doing depends on public safety and public health, right? Everything that we do. So recreation, water department, health department, the municipal courts, all of the departments, right? In the finance department, everything. So every week I was getting chewed out and getting my ass handed to me every week in a meeting, and they would be smiling and snickering. And he was like, don't smile and snicker, because if she failed, we all fail, because everything for me depends on this. Right, I'm investing in this. And so 5% at the time of our police department's budget, that 20 million I talked about was ARPA dollars, separate and apart. The 5% of the police department's budget, their budget at the time was $235 million. So 5% of that was like $11 million. And so that's good money to be able to start with, to be able to hire and have an operational budget, because I know some cities have like only one person or two people. You can't hire, you can't do nothing. So what we said was, we're going to also create some more ordinance. So for every 10 police officers that go into the police academy, then we get to hire a social worker on their budget. And that social worker, right, the first year they put 100 officers in. So I got 10 spots. And those 10 spots is how I was able to hire. So creating ordinances like that helps you to keep getting things in perpetuity. So when the police academy graduated, my social workers graduated too. At the end of the police training, 2 weeks, they train together. They do workshops together on implicit bias, safety in the community, different trainings, but they do it together so that when they in community together, they know each other. So for me, the energy and the attitude was, we getting everything law enforcement get. They first responders, we first responders. They got a budget, we got a budget. They got a building, we gonna share their building space. They got a graduation, we gonna be at the graduation too. We graduating too. They on the stage, we on the stage. So there's nothing that they have that we are not a part of, and because we are public safety too. And so we have to know that we are public safety too. I know a lot of us don't want to work with law enforcement, and it don't look good to work with law enforcement, but we got to find somebody that can navigate both sides, that can navigate the law enforcement side, navigate the community side, and we meet in the middle to make sure we all get what we need to get. And the mayor was adamant about that. So when we do our press conferences, we're going to have a press conference together. Y'all do y'all first, y'all going to do y'all second. We're going to stand up here together, right? We are very clear about each other's roles and responsibilities. It was kind of forced on us. Y'all going to work together. Y'all going to work alongside each other. Y'all going to know all the same information. Y'all going to be held to the same level of accountability. And that's how that happens in terms of meshing community-based organizations, law enforcement, city government, Board of Education. At the Board of Education, in the beginning of every year, we get to speak to all the teachers. We're going to go talk to the clergy office. We have a clergy affairs office in City Hall, and they meet once a month. We come into the clergy affairs meeting, right? So it had to be collective and collaborative. It wasn't just in word, it had to be in deed too. And the mayor would be there, and he would sit at the table. He took attendance, and if you didn't come to the collective meetings, and he would look to see who didn't attend the meeting, what organization didn't come. So if I'm funding 40 organizations and only 10 people coming to the meeting, we got a problem. And we were able to end their contracts or snatch their funding if they didn't attend these collective meetings. They had to be present. And he wanted to see who was not present. You had to attend at least 9 out of the 12 meetings that we had every year. So there was accountability on the organizations to come together, work together, do things together, collaborate and partner. And the mayor would want to get the report outs on that. He wanted to know, is the hub there? Is the street team there? Is the safe zone there? Is the My Brother's Keeper there? He wanted to know. And if they wasn't, then he had a problem. Why not? Because it takes all of us. Was city council there? Was the police department there? And he wanted to know.
So that is just amazing to hear. That level of accountability and coordination was developed. It's almost like a dream scenario for many of us who have been in these positions. So again, kudos to the work that's happening. You've spoken on something a couple of times, directly and indirectly, and I want to circle back to it because it's fascinating to me. You had mentioned earlier about the street teams and when you're doing the work about like going to the big homies and the Crips and Bloods and holding them accountable and saying, hey, like y'all can't be doing this. I think you said Miss Williams can't get shot. If y'all got your thing going on, like so be it. But Miss Williams can't get caught up in this. And then you also said that you were operating in those spaces without some of the most relevant data, which law enforcement has, because they have whole surveillance teams that are working 25/8 in order to gather that surveillance and that data. What that sounds like to me are like the core components of what a lot of cities and different jurisdictions have adopted as GVI model. It sounds like you all are actually working, or at the time you were working with the best of both worlds. It's the community accountability with the data that comes from the people who work really hard to get it. Can you talk about, well, and let me add this piece too. What I also heard was working lockstep with the mayor, with the Department of Public Safety, with the police department to say, we are public safety, right? Public safety does not just mean incarcerating people. It means reducing the risk that somebody's going to be harmed. That's the public health. So can you talk about how that worked then and what has it evolved to now? And if you were talking to a city manager, a community leader, outreach worker, somebody running the OVP, what advice would you have for them in building that very specific ecosystem and that model?
So I would say in building your ecosystem, really creating a space, because I know a lot of people feel like they don't have time to come to another meeting or do another thing. But that ecosystem meeting has to be important, and it has to be housed by something or someone. Our Brick City Peace Collective houses that. So you got to have, number one, some umbrella that it falls under, and who is going to organize it, and it needs some funding, right? And we were able to get funding from the governor's office to fund our ecosystem. Basically, like, we got an earmark. So you can go to your governor, your state offices, and ask them for earmarks to be able to fund that coordination. So folks are not working in silos. I think people don't even know that's possible. So go get some earmarks from your representative, your assembly people, your senators, your governor's office. Ask them to earmark dollars so that you can have your coordination strategy to be able to be funded, because that matters. And so I would say that's a gem that we were able to do. And it went from maybe $250,000 to now being funded at $5 million. And a lot of, places are losing funding, and we're about to lose some of that funding, but at least we'll have some. You need some dollars to be able to have a coordinated strategy. And in that coordinated strategy, you have people to be able to hold people accountable, create energy around it where it's collaborative, it's working together, it's consistent. We meet the second Wednesday of every month. It's consistent. Everybody knows this meeting happens the second Wednesday of every month. Like, hands down. I would say to be able to make sure that you know people's roles and responsibilities, and we don't have people in each other's lanes. We have 7 lanes of work that we fund people for, which is trauma recovery, victim services. We have youth mentoring, safe passage, high-risk intervention work, 7 lanes. I'm forgetting the other ones. In those, therapeutic and clinical services, and domestic violence. And in those 7 lanes, there's enough work in the left space for everybody. So when people are crossing over into lanes that's not theirs, we get to tap them and say, go back over there. You don't do high-risk intervention work. This is for our gang culture. You got to stay over there. Go do your youth mentoring. And it's not the same work, right? You got to stay over there. If you do domestic violence, stay over there. Don't come over here with the therapeutic and clinical services work. And it helps people stay accountable for what they do. And I think that that's been successful and helpful. And we put dollars into each of the lanes so that folks don't have to, compete for all of the dollars. And having the social workers in all the precincts, we have a poster in the police stations that say social workers available upon request. So if people come into the police department and they don't want to talk to law enforcement, they can ask for a social worker. And a social worker is a credible clinician, right? Somebody who looks like them, that's from community, that's relatable. And a social worker may not always be a person with a degree, right? We have social work specialists, we have social work engineers, social workers, just different titles of social work. But that don't mean a licensed clinical social worker and a person that's going to screen them for mental health. That means we have a social work specialist, somebody who can help navigate from point A to point B. And they may be someone justice impacted, formerly incarcerated. I have quite a few of them, right? So for every credible clinician, I have an outreach worker that's relatable. And us being able to name things that we need so that they can get a good salary, so that they get health benefits, so that they can, be able to be a civil service employee. They can get, civil service titles. We got to be clever enough to be able to do that for our folks. I think that's
community health worker.
Community health worker is a civil service title, right? So we got to be able to do that and not trying to be so unique in our own. We want to call them this. We could call them what we want, but can they get some benefits with that title? No, right? So we got to just be able to do that. So from the ground to the government, level and everywhere in between, we got to make sure that makes sense for the outcomes that we're trying to get, for the impact that we're trying to have.
All of that is beautiful. All of that's beautiful, and it reconfirms why I wanted to have you on the show. I'm imagining that there is a mayor who is listening to this show. Okay. I'm imagining that there is a director of public safety listening to the show. I would love for any city manager, mayor, director of safety to hear, how do you coordinate the nuances of the relationships between law enforcement, the big homies on the block, community outreach organizations who are doing the work? How does that all come together to be successful like we've seen it in Jersey?
So it really has to be, it's that top-down approach, right? From leadership down, but it's also from the bottom up, right? And then we meet in the middle. And the top down, which is our mayor, our city councils, our business administrators, all of those folks got to understand the work. Somebody got to teach them the work. Somebody got to let them understand that this can't be all the way systematized, right? There has to be some space for fluidity. So what may work under the health department may not work under this, right, model. What may work for all of the other employees and all of the things, you got to create some different spaces for them because they're dealing with crisis all day long. Every day, all day is crisis, crisis, crisis. And in city and in government, every day is crisis, crisis, crisis. So when we're dealing with people who are working in crisis all day, every day, how do we take care of the people who are doing the work and not treat them like corporate, right? And not treat them like a corporation. So I would say for our mayors and our people who are, incorporating the GVI model, any of the models, your violence model, advanced peace model, any of the models that folks are incorporating, that you have to have some fluidity in terms of the execution because it does not look the same and it does not fit what government says this work is supposed to be. It doesn't really fit under a government model, if I had to be very honest, right? But we need government because we need them, right? But violence intervention work and CVI work does not fit under the government just because of the scrutiny that it gets, because people don't believe that we equal more safety. They believe police equals more safety. When I first got my building, they gave us a police department that a lot of police brutality was happening out of, where people were being brutalized, where our 67 rebellion sparked out of. And they gave me the building and they moved the police out and gave them another space. The week that we was opening up, the community came and protested the space because they like, why would y'all move the police? We want the police here. And we like, well, no, we're going to do this. We're going to create resources. We're going to intervene. We're going to mediate the conflicts, all of the things that we're going to do. And they could not hear us because they still believe that police equals more safety. They believe that the uniform makes them safe. So we have to battle that culture. And many of us are only 10 years into the work, from a professionalized place. And we're talking about 100-year history of policing that you're up against. We got to be careful on how we tell people what safety looks like, what the hot spots are, why we are doing this work here. All of the things we're up against so much that your credibility is all you have, your reputation is all you have, your execution of the work with fidelity is all that you have. You not blending into the streets so much that they can't tell the difference between you and the participants and you and the folks that we trying to help is a fine line. Because we got all of these fine lines, you got to be able to truly understand the work in a way that your role and your responsibility is never compromised, or you don't have to explain it so much and defend it so much. We spend so much time defending the work that we can't do the work. We spend so much time in city council meetings defending, ourselves, that we can't get the work done efficiently. We spend so much time arguing at the hospital with the doctors in the trauma unit why we there with the families, or why the police shouldn't talk to our participant right now and question them why they got a gunshot in their arm. Like, not right now. Question them later. Right. And we spend so much time fighting the prosecutor's office and all of the offices that we're fighting so hard, that fighting every day is burning us out. So I would say for the mayors that's coming into this work and adopting this work, create space to open up doors for the people that can do it and block for them. Don't make it harder for them to do the work. Block for them. The mayor creates space for me. He opens the door. He say, go ahead, go do your work. And as I'm going in and do my work, I'm bringing more people in. Like, come on, y'all. We kicking in the doors. But when we look back, we got to look back and see that we got some defense out there to help us. We need to see the mayor and the business administrator and the police director and the city council people there and the corporate council defending us, not fighting and working against us. That's what I would say for those folks. I need you to block for us because we going in.
Yeah.
And we need y'all to cover us because we taking fire. So cover down on us. Help us do the work and not be in the way. And some of y'all don't believe in the work in real life because y'all still believe in policing policies and police equal more safety, right? And if you believe that, then that's fine, but don't get in the way of the folks that's really out here putting their lives on the line every day. And I would say for the folks that's doing the work, you got to know when it's time for you to sit down. You got to know when you have done your work and when it's too much or when it's enough. Because sometimes we cause more harm staying in the work. We don't pass the baton when we need to pass it. We're passing on trauma, right, to the next group of folks to do the work. We so angry and disgruntled that we didn't get what we needed to get, and we leave it worse off than we need to, right? And we got to make sure us as leaders in this work that while we in it, we're doing it with the best hearts that we can. That when it's too much or when it doesn't fulfill us anymore, then we move out the way gracefully and not pass on the bad. And so I would say that in terms of leadership, I would say that in terms of folks that are at the top that makes decisions, like block and defend the people that's on the front line. Because when the front line is wounded, me and my, who helps the wounded folks, right? Who helps to help. When the front line is wounded and the front line is down, and we look back and ain't nobody there, then we like, what are we doing? So that's a real place to create some space for folks to be able to putting it on the line every day. They getting beat up every day. They getting scrutinized every day. They defending this work every day with the passion that they have because they know why they do this work and the purpose of this work. So we under government, we don't need government to create more or make it harder for us to do because the community already make it hard.
Boy, oh boy. I have two more questions for you, but I feel like you may have already answered them. I'm going to ask them anyway because these are my closing questions, and feel free to be like, I already spoke on that. Like, yep. I know you're going to keep it real with me. The first question is this. If you were brought into, and I know you do some consulting, so this is not even a hypothetical. If you were brought into a mid-sized city tomorrow with rising violence, limited trust, a skeptical public safety department, police department, what's the first move that you make? And what is the one move that you refuse to make, even if you were under pressure to make that?
That's an excellent question. I think that when I came in, it's tough. Being a woman in this work is tough because the mayor, my business administrator, my chief of staff are all men, right? City council, heavily men, men. And so making sure that you come in with the plan, right? Like with a clear plan, like I would say a plan that people can see. A lot of times this work is abstract and we just feel it, know it, right? But people, the other folks need to touch it. And it's hard for us to create touch for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that we create some visuals for us. We work with Rutgers University that was great in giving us data. So they analyze our data. And every meeting that we have every month, that second Wednesday of every month, collective meeting that we have with all the organizations, they're on the agenda to present the data. And they're going to tell us how many homicides we had in this area, how many domestic violence incidents we had in this area, how many stolen cars, how many, whatever the incidents are, and they give us the data. And we can easily probably get the crime data from the police department, but they analyze it for us in a way that says 4 of the organizations are in these areas where this stuff is happening. What are y'all doing differently to address this issue? Because it's happening in the South Ward. And if you're in the South Ward, you got 9 homicides right now. Like we have to, do something different. So now we're asking people that's working in the other areas to now move their resources all over here because that's where it's needed. And yes, you have a great idea over here, but your great idea is not helpful over there because that's not where we need it at. So we need people to be able to move. Like, so we are using the data to inform why we put all of the resources here, why we spent more money here, and able to kind of say that and give the picture now. So when they come to the meeting, it's like, all right, the West Ward is the best ward. We got fewer homicides, right? The South Ward is the whatever, so now they understanding data in a way to see their impact in it and how they fit in it when before they didn't understand it. So we create that for city council. We create that for the mayor. We create that for everybody to say, all right, here's the picture. And this the data, and the data says this, and this is what we did because this is what the data said. Now you got some credibility. The police gave us this data. We got our own data, and we compare it side by side. This what the street said. This what the police said. This is the real story. And now we're going to create a peace academy in this area. So I would say that the data is important, and we got to get people to interpret data for us and not shy away from it. I've gotten embarrassed because I didn't have data before, and if someone challenged me in front of the mayor and was like, how you know your program worked? I'm like, oh, because I'm out here doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And they're like, well, where's your data? And I didn't have it. And the mayor looked at me and he was like, you got to get it. Like, you got to have it. He was like, I know you're working hard, but you can't prove it. And if you can't prove it, we come from a show and prove community, right? People want to see show and prove.
Yep.
And that's where we lose at because we can't show and prove. So I would say that's where I start at. Jump right in the middle at trying to show the show. How can I create some type of, showing of the work, the execution, why it works, why it matters. So I would say that part. That's where I would start at. I would create a picture and then from there we start to map out how to build trust in these areas, how to build community in these areas, how to pull law enforcement out because they're too heavily involved in this area, how to employ more resource workers or more whatever it is that we need, and then justify why I gave this organization this money because they're needed here. So I would say the justification, I was jumping with learning how to justify all the work that you're doing versus being on the defense. We got to be on offense. We got to play offense better. And that's what I would say we don't do a good job at. We're constantly on defense mode.
Excellent answer. I think you captured everything I was looking for in that. So I'm going to go to my last question of this interview, and hopefully you'll allow me to bring you back onto the show, because I feel like there's so much more that people can learn from you. This question is a bit more personal, but I don't think it's inappropriately personal. The question is you spoke about when it's time to move on, right? When leadership stays too long and then they start impacting the work in a negative way because they have all of their baggage, all of their bias, all of those things. So, what is the benchmark that you're marching towards that says, "Okay, Lakeesha, I've accomplished this. It's now okay to move on to my next thing"? And if you feel like sharing, what is that next thing?
I think that for me, this has become a lifestyle. So it's become tough to separate the two. So the mayor always
Absolutely.
has a meeting, or there's always a meeting for the mayor, a meeting for this, a meeting for that. If my work hours is 9 to 6, the next meeting is at 6. Right. So there's never really a off. Or if the shooting happened at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, then we out our bed. So being able to balance, right, time for work and time for your personal life has been tough. And I believe that, and I spoke about this at a site recently, that many of us are not doing well in our personal lives because we don't know how to balance the two. And we at home arguing with our loved ones about why you got to go to the meeting, why you got to keep answering your phone, why you got to get out your bed, right? And that's a constant argument, and you're like, I gotta go to work, and they like starting to hate your job because they starting to resent you for it because you donate so much time to it. So for me, I believe that I do well, and I do well in facilitation of trainings and workshops.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's where I come alive at. But I also come alive when I go outside and I'm like rallying and I'm protesting. Like I still love that side of the work, the organizing side, to make phone calls and organize, things. So I still thrive in that area. But I think that my next is probably writing curriculum, writing, facilitating training, doing consulting work to help people learn how to do this for cities, right? Because I did it and I made some mistakes and it took me longer to do some stuff. And had I had some more training, had I had a little bit more, then I would have been able to do probably more. The policy side of the work for me is undone. I'm really supposed to be doing policy in my deputy mayor role, and I
Mm-hmm.
just haven't been able to get to the policy work. I haven't been able to, write more ordinances and legislation and all of those things. And I know that that's necessary. So my next, probably this year, the next 12 months, I'm going to focus on writing a blueprint and being able to leave it behind so that the next person who comes behind me, I can just say, here you go. And really wanting this work to run like a machine, because we know that, a lot of people
Yes.
on sides of the work, the survivors, right? People who have lost people, there's a side to this work, the survivors work. I've been able to develop a Few Strong Men, which is an all men's domestic violence response team. And then having an all men's domestic violence response team, we able to see a decrease in domestic violence incidents because we were so focused on shooting incidents that we didn't make the connection. And the data helped us to see this, that there's a correlation between street violence and domestic violence. But we didn't make the correlation, so we didn't make the investment. And now we made the investment, we're able to see all the numbers go down: domestic violence, sexual violence, community violence. And so somebody got to help make those connections. And we got to be able to see the data and analyze the data so that we can make the proper investment, so we can do the correct strategy. So now I have an all men's domestic violence response team. I have a crisis response team for mental health, and I have a shooting response team, right? And we have a system where those people, they get deployed out like clockwork. Like I don't have to be present to know that it's happening. Once the notification come, I'm second for the notification. It goes out automatic, and the team that's responsible knows who it goes to. And so now, that's how we're able to see the impact. And then we are case conferencing that stuff. We got to go back and, I know a lot of us have shoot and response teams, and we doing the shoot and response work the next day and all of those things. And some of us don't. Some of us don't have those meetings for our focus deterrent strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And some of us don't even know what that strategy is. Right. So I think that the more, nuanced we are, I know there's a lot of new teams and they just now starting. We are on the end of the work where we are trying to reinforce it so that it just runs like a machine. So we got to have different response teams. You can't have one response team doing everything. And if everybody's
Right.
doing everything, then nobody's doing nothing. That's what the mayor tells us. If you're doing everything, then in essence you're doing nothing. So I think that that's key. I think that that's key.
So this is a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I appreciate you so much for agreeing to be on the show. Because again, you dropped so many gems and jewels. This is a value-filled conversation. Uh, and obviously, the show is called The Incredible Messenger with intention, because the people who I seek out to be on the show, I see them as being credible messengers, credible messengers for the sectors, for the roles, for the lanes which they occupy and the work that they lead. So that, and I've said this multiple times in this episode, so that people can hear from them, learn from them, and improve upon what they're doing in their cities or whatever it is. I obviously see you as a credible messenger in that regard. And so I would like to offer you this opportunity to close the show out with what is the message that you would like to share with the world about whatever it may be?
I think that who you choose on your teams matter. Who the mayor chooses matters. And if you don't have the right person, it will take you longer to get to your finish line. It's going to take you longer to be able to build relationships. This work is relationship based. And if you don't have the right person who can build relationships, then again, you're not going to get the right outcomes that you're looking for. And so people matter, credible messengers matter, incredible messengers matter. The people who are willing to do the most when other people are not, the people who are willing to show up when other people are not, the people who are willing to get out their beds, who are willing to put aside their ego and their pride for the greater good of the mission, right? That matters. People who are disciplined, you have to have people who have discipline. That matters when we're looking to hire people in these positions, because I see people in all cities posting, looking for a director for their violence prevention, looking for associate director, looking for, and it's not always the person with the most degrees, but it's the person who has the most relationships. We got to ask that question in our interview process. What are your relationships like with community? What is your relationship like with the education community, with the faith-based community, with the gang community? Like, that matters. And as much as people, may or may not think that it matters, then you're not going to get anywhere with a person who sits behind the desk who don't have relationship and connection to people. And if you have people who are not people, then you're going to lose. And so I'm very grateful for my mayor, who's a people person. He comes from community. His father, is Amiri Baraka. He's an organizer from the Black Power movement, right? And you got to have the proper handling of people. And if you don't have the proper handling of people, then we're going to always have a problem organizing people. So I would say for all of those people who are doing violence prevention work, credible messenger work, you have to have great relationships with people and being willing to put your ego and pride to the side for the greater good of the mission. And the mission is to be out here to save the hearts and minds of our people and to leave community better than the way you inherited it. That's the mission. That's the goal. That's what we're here to do. We're not here to hold anything for ourselves, but to give it all back to community and to the people. And so from Deputy Mayor Lakeesha Eure to Director for the Office of Violence Prevention to the Chair for the Anti-Violence Coalition, I learned valuable lessons in showing up for people. And I became credible because I showed up every time for community, for people, for the city council, for the mayor, and for law enforcement. And knowing your role and responsibility matters more than anything else. If you know your role and you know your responsibility and you know the mission, then you're not going to betray it, right? And so you have a mission, you got to follow it through and know when it's time to go. And so for me, I am nearing the end of my tenure where it may be time for me to go. So I thank you to the Incredible Messenger podcast. Jonathan, thank you for having me on. Can't wait to do this again. We may need to do a part 2 or part 3, but looking forward to being able to work with you. Thank you so much to everyone out there doing the work. My hat's off to you. Continue to do the work and continue to be on the front line. I respect the work. I love the work. And we are saving lives nationally across the nation. CVILA, the National Network for OVP, the CPSC, the HAVI, Cities United, all of our national NLC, all of our national partners, right, who are doing this work collectively. Hats off to you and appreciate you for always inviting us into the space to learn and to do this work better. Thank you to the Incredible Messenger podcast. Jonathan, thank you.